All right, we've talked about wireless. Let's talk about wireless security. So there's a few different options for wireless security. Open, WEP, WPA, WPA2. What's the difference? Well, open access, you know what this looks like. This is going to Starbucks or wherever. You have an open network. Anybody can get on. Most importantly, most importantly to us, anybody can connect. Anybody can listen. To listen to traffic on an open access wireless network, an open wireless network, you don't even have to connect to it. You just have to be sitting nearby. So, or if you have a directional antenna, you don't even have to be sitting nearby. You could be sitting a block away or 3 blocks away, listening into what's going on this open network. A very important thing to note, though, while traffic on an open network is not encrypted, the wireless traffic is not encrypted, traffic to a website that is encrypted is still protected. So if you're talking to Amazon.com and you're at the HTTPS Amazon.com, then your traffic is still going to be encrypted. The outside guy's still going to know that somebody sitting next to you listening in is still going to know that you're going to Amazon, but they're not going to sniff your information, gather your passwords, any of that. If you're going through HTTPS, you're still going to have encrypted traffic. However, all of your traffic by default on open access is wide open for everybody around you to see. So less of an issue now that more sites are using HTTPS, or basically all sites should be using HTTPS at this point, but still open access networks present a potential security risk, so be careful with those. WEP, Wired Equivalent Privacy, was one of the early encryption protocols for wireless networks. It uses a 40 or 128-bit key. We'll talk more in the future about encryption and key length and all that stuff. But wired equivalent privacy is broken. It does not work. It does not protect your network. It provides no security at all from a determined attacker. And not even that determined, just mildly interested attacker who has the right application downloaded and can click some buttons. It's not hard to break WEP. It's not hard to break into a WEP network, regardless of which type of key, whether you're a 40 or 128-bit. There are weaknesses in the protocol that open it up to this type of attack that it makes it super easy to attack. And you can download aircrack-ng if you want to and try it out. Basically, you break it by repeatedly forcing clients off the network, then capturing as they try to reconnect and listening in as they try to reconnect. You capture a whole bunch of those reconnects, and then you use this program that uses all that information to get the key, and then you can get on the network and you're free to go. WPA2, well, okay, skipping just a second, WPA1. WPA stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access. WPA1 turns out had the same vulnerabilities as WEP. So it's just as broken, just as useless. Don't use it. WPA2 is the current standard for encryption on a wireless network. And Wi-Fi Protected Access is what it stands for. Version 2, its only vulnerability is if you choose a crappy password. And that's, I mean, basically anything with a password is vulnerable if you choose a crappy password. So WPA2 is awesome. It's much more secure. There's not the same fundamental breaks in the protocol, but you can still break it with bad passwords. So if your password is I love you 123 or password 1 or this is my Wi-Fi, then you're still going to basically not have a super protected network because anybody who wants to get in will try those types of passwords first. But if you have a good long 20-character password, then you're probably good to go. And the only way you can break in is basically with brute force by trying every possible password to get in. And the way that breaking into a WPA2 network would work, if you choose a crappy password, is basically you listen into the network, get a copy of what's called the handshake, the authentication handshake. When devices authenticate to the WPA2 network, they try this, they communicate, they handshake to make sure everybody's talking and we're connected and we're good to go. Well, basically you listen with your antenna, you listen to that, you capture that with Wireshark or whatever tool, and then you check passwords. You basically try a whole bunch of passwords on that authentication handshake. So when you're trying to break into a WPA2 network, you're not having to repeatedly attach yourself to the network or repeatedly connect to the network. You're not doing that, so there's no way to detect it from outside or from inside. There's no way to detect that you're trying to break into this network by listening to the traffic or listening to clients trying to connect or anything like that. Because you capture that handshake and then using Wireshark and tools to try different passwords on the Wireshark capture, that's how you're going to do it. It's really cool. Now, you're probably most familiar with a pre-shared key network, and that's what you're going to have at home. You have a key, and that key is the password. What's your Wi-Fi password? That pre-shared key is the key for all users. So to get access to the network, you share that key, and it's super easy to implement. Basically, everybody gets the password, everybody can log on. However, it is hard to secure. And the reason it's hard to secure is because a shared secret isn't a secret. And like they say, 2 people can keep a secret if one of those people is dead. So it's really hard to keep a pre-shared key a secret. It works fine at home because there's probably only 10, 15 people that know it. And really, the risk isn't that great. I don't care if the babysitter I had last week shares it with the babysitter I have next week or shares it with her friend. And really, there's no incentive for her to do that. So it works at home. You don't want to do that in an enterprise environment. A pre-shared key, again, is fine if you have 5 people on your network. It's not ideal if you have 30. And the part of the problem is that changing the password stinks. If you fire somebody from your company, you don't want them to have access to your wireless network anymore. So you want to cut them off. But if they have the password, then they can get on. And they can come by the office or sit outside the office or sit 3 blocks away with their directional antenna if they're really crazy about it, and access the network. So changing the password is the only way to kick somebody off the network for good. And the problem then is that you have to change the password on every computer that accesses it. That's a problem. So we have an alternative, and that's called the RADIUS, Remote Dial-In User Service. I don't know where the A comes from. But the way that this works is it uses a centralized authentication server. If you've ever been on our university campus, and as a student, you have credentials that allow you to log into the secure wireless network on campus. And that uses a RADIUS network. You don't have a password. You have your account password, but you don't have the network password to get access to the Wi-Fi network. So this uses that centralized authentication server, just like logging into a computer at work or logging into Gmail, right? Each user has their own username and password, and that authenticates you to the network. And once you're authenticated, then it gives you, and then the authentication process gets you a key to access the network, and you're good to go. The beauty of this, if you fire that one guy, you disable that one guy's account, and everybody else can still get on. Nothing changes for the other 30 people in your business or 300 people or 3,000 people, but that one guy can no longer access the network. So RADIUS is awesome for enterprise networks. Pre-shared key works just fine at home, but not for an enterprise. An important something you might want to know about Wi-Fi Protected Setup. Now, you've probably seen something like this, some sort of Wi-Fi Protected Setup if you've bought a router in the last, 5 years. So it's included by default. By default, it's an 8-character PIN to connect to the network. And each device is randomly given a PIN, and you can type in the PIN to connect to the network. Well, the problem is that PIN is only 8 characters, and it doesn't take that long to try every possible PIN. 2 to 12 hours, and you're good to go, and you're on the network, and you're ready to go, and whether you're supposed to be there or not. So, by default, I highly recommend disabling that 8-character PIN to connect to your Wi-Fi Protected Setup network. However, there's an added layer of security that you can put on top of that. And it's a button. There's a button on your router that you can push, and some of them have it, some of them don't. But you push the button, and that enables that Wi-Fi Protected Setup for a short amount of time. So basically, it turns that on and says you have 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes to type that 8-character password. And then after that goes away, after that time expires, then Wi-Fi protected setup isn't working anymore and the devices will not be able to connect, and that is still safe. So if you have a push button method, you can keep that enabled, but do not have the 8-character pin always enabled. Anybody can type at any time, because at most it's going to take random attacker number 7 12 hours to attach himself to your wireless network and get credentials to do that. And Wi-Fi protected setup is not an encryption protocol. Wi-Fi protected setup is just a way to connect devices. So rather than having a key that you share with everybody and you have to give them your 30-character good 30-character Wi-Fi password, now you have this 8-character pin and you can say, here, just type this number in. And that tells the router to share credentials, and that allows the device onto the network. It's still using probably a pre-shared key to get connected though. There are a couple other security protocols or security features that Wi-Fi networks and in the case of MAC filtering, any network can have. But I want to talk about them just for a minute. MAC filtering, basically you only allow certain MAC addresses onto the network. And so you get a list of all the MAC addresses of the devices on your network and you say, this is allowed, this is allowed, this is allowed, this is allowed. Nothing else is allowed to get on my network. And it seems like that'd be a great idea because every device has a unique MAC address, and that MAC address is unique to a single device. So if your daughter's iPhone has a certain MAC address and you want to allow that one onto the network, you can say, okay, this MAC address is allowed on. If your daughter's boyfriend's MAC address is not something you want on there, you don't add that to the list, and then it's not able to get on the network. However, the problem is it's very, very simple, trivial even, to spoof a MAC address. And anybody can change the MAC address that their device reports on the network. So this probably protects from random idiot neighbor number 7 from connecting to your network because they don't have the right MAC address. But it's not going to keep somebody who knows what they're doing or is even mildly interested in learning how to change a MAC address to get onto the network, because it's not a complicated process. So MAC filtering, while it sounds really neat, doesn't really add a ton of security. Another one that sounds like it would help but doesn't really do that much is disabling the SSID broadcast. And an SSID is what's called the service set identifier, but really it's the name of your network. So on campus here, we have UNO Secure and UNO Guest. Those are the SSIDs. It's the name of the network, and those are broadcast. So when I pull up my phone and I look at the list of available wireless networks, UNO Guest and UNO Secure and EduRoam and some other ones are easily visible and available to me. That's because those are broadcasting the SSID and advertising that around them so that anybody who wants to can see that those networks are available and potentially try to connect to them. You can disable the broadcast of the SSID. What that does is makes it so that your name, the name of your network, doesn't show up in that list. However, it doesn't prevent somebody from learning the name of your network and attaching themselves to it. So if I sit around long enough and listen, I'm going to be able to pick up the name of the nearby networks without too much trouble. So again, like MAC filtering, the SSID broadcast, disabling SSID broadcast sounds like it's helping, but really it's just kind of making it mildly inconvenient to connect to your network rather than actually harder. It's not preventing a determined attacker from doing it. So the best thing you can do is have WPA2 with a really good, strong password. Last device we're going to talk about here. This is called the Pineapple, and it's awesome. This Pineapple is a hardware device that's basically designed to do wireless network attacks. It'll attack wireless networks. It can do a man-in-the-middle attack, where it'll insert itself and gather all the Wi-Fi traffic from nearby. It can do network mapping. It can map where wireless networks are. It can map where devices are on the wireless network. And it can do an evil twin attack, where it basically copies a nearby access point and pretends to be that access point. And again, filtering all the traffic through you rather than through it, filtering all the traffic through itself rather than through the official non-evil twin access point. And this Pineapple then is a super useful tool if you want to do security testing on wireless networks. So in summary, WEP is broken. Don't use it. Don't have an open wireless access point at your house. Use WPA2. It's the default now, and it's the way to go. And also, MAC filtering and SSID hiding are security theater, basically. They sound like they're helping, but really they're not doing that much to protect your network. And that is wireless security.